Clara Zimmerman had apologized 17 times in the past hour, and Yates Norwood was done pretending he didn't notice. She stood in the conference room doorway of Norwood Manufacturing, gripping a tablet against her chest like a shield, her brown hair escaping from what had probably started as a neat ponytail that morning. Her cheeks flushed pink as she stammered through yet another unnecessary apology for interrupting his meeting, even though he'd been the one to call her in. "I'm so sorry. I just wanted to make sure I had the numbers right before the presentation, and I'm sorry if I'm taking up your time. I know you're busy, and I'm sorry. I should have." "Stop." Yates held up one hand, his voice firm but not unkind. The three executives sitting around the mahogany table glanced between them with poorly concealed curiosity. "Don't apologize." Clara's mouth opened, then closed. Her green eyes widened slightly. "Oh, I'm sore," she caught herself, her face turning an even deeper shade of red. "I mean, okay." He almost smiled at that, but maintained his composure. Yates had built his reputation on being unshakable, the 34-year-old CEO who turned his father's struggling manufacturing company into a powerhouse that now employed over 3,000 people across the Midwest. He didn't smile easily and he didn't suffer inefficiency. But he also recognized talent when he saw it, and Clara Zimmerman, despite her maddening habit of apologizing for existing, was brilliant. "The presentation looks excellent," he said, gesturing for her to continue. "Walk us through the projected savings from the supply chain restructure." She did, and for the next 20 minutes, her nervousness faded into something else entirely: confidence, competence, passion for her work. Clara had been with the company for 3 years, working her way up from a junior analyst position to lead the operations team. She knew the numbers better than anyone, could spot inefficiencies from a mile away, and had saved the company millions with her innovative approaches to logistics. She just couldn't seem to stop apologizing for it. When the meeting ended and the executives filed out, Clara began gathering her materials. "Thank you for letting me present. I'm sorry if I went over time. I know you have another meeting at 3 and I'm..." "Clara." Yates stood, buttoning his suit jacket. At 6'2", he had a commanding presence that most people found intimidating. Clara took a small step back. "Don't apologize. You did good work. Own it." She blinked at him, clearly unsure how to respond. I mean, I know everyone's time is valuable and I don't want to..." "You're valuable," he interrupted. "Your time, your expertise. Stop diminishing yourself." Something flickered across her face, surprise maybe, or something deeper. She nodded slowly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Okay. Thank you." He watched her leave, noticing the way her shoulders were still slightly hunched, as if she was trying to make herself smaller as she walked through the hallways of a building where she belonged just as much as anyone else. Over the following weeks, Yates found himself increasingly aware of Clara's presence in the office. He'd always known she was good at her job, but now he noticed other things. The way she brought coffee to the night security guard and knew his daughter's name. How she stayed late to help the new hires understand the company's systems, never making them feel stupid for asking questions. The genuine warmth in her laugh when something actually amused her, so different from the nervous sound she made when she was uncomfortable. He also noticed that she apologized constantly to everyone, for everything. For sending emails, for asking necessary questions, for existing in shared spaces. "I'm sorry, I just need to grab something from the printer," she said one evening when Yates was working late in his office and she passed by his open door. "Don't apologize," he called out without looking up from his laptop. There was a pause. Then, quietly, "Sorry." That time he did look up. Clara stood frozen in the hallway, her hand covering her mouth, looking mortified at having apologized for apologizing. "It's a habit," she said defensively, lowering her hand. "I'm working on it." "Why do you do it?" The question came out before he could stop himself. It wasn't professional, wasn't his business. Clara shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "Do what?" "Apologize for taking up space." She was quiet for a long moment, and he thought she might brush off the question or make an excuse to leave. Instead, she stepped into his office doorway, her expression more serious than he usually saw it. "My ex-boyfriend used to say I was too much," she said finally. "Too loud, too ambitious, too demanding. I guess I got used to making myself smaller. Easier." Yates felt an unexpected surge of anger toward a man he'd never met. He was an idiot. That surprised a genuine laugh out of her. Maybe. But 3 years of someone telling you that you're annoying tends to stick, you know? "You're not annoying," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "You're excellent at what you do. You should act like it." Clara's expression softened into something he couldn't quite read. "Thanks, Mr. Norwood." "Yates," he corrected. "We've worked together for 3 years. You can use my first name." "That feels weird," she admitted. "So does hearing someone apologize 20 times a day for no reason," he countered. "But here we are." She smiled at that, a real smile that made her eyes crinkle at the corners. "Good night, Yates." "Good night, Clara." The next morning he arrived to find a coffee on his desk, black, no sugar, exactly how he liked it, with a sticky note attached. "Thanks for yesterday. Also, I'm not sorry for getting you coffee, so don't even start. CZ." He kept the note. The weeks blurred into months, and somehow, without either of them quite planning it, they fell into a pattern. Clara would work late on Thursdays when she needed uninterrupted time for her reports. Yates always worked late. They'd end up in the break room around 8, microwaving leftover lunches or ordering takeout, talking about projects and strategies, and occasionally veering into more personal territory. He learned that she'd grown up in a small town in Iowa, the middle child of 5, always fighting to be heard. That she loved hiking but was terrible at any sport involving a ball. That she'd wanted to be an astronaut until she discovered she got motion sick on elevators. She learned that he'd never wanted to run the family business, had planned to be an architect, but duty had called when his father's health failed. That he ran every morning at 5:30, rain or shine. That he had a sister who lived in Seattle with her wife and 2 kids, and he missed them more than he admitted. "You should visit them," Clara said one Thursday, dumping soy sauce packets onto her fried rice. They were sitting in his office rather than the break room because a pipe had burst on the second floor and the break room was currently a construction zone. "I will," Yates said, "when things calm down." "Things never calm down," she pointed out. "That's not how business works. You just have to make time for what matters." "Is that why you're here at 9 o'clock at night?" She had the grace to look sheepish. "That's different. I like what I do, so do I." "But do you like your life?" The question was gentle, not accusatory. Yates considered it, which was answer enough. The truth was, he couldn't remember the last time he'd done something just because he wanted to, not because it served the company or maintained his reputation or fulfilled an obligation. "I like this," he said finally, gesturing between them with his fork. "These conversations." Clara's cheeks pinked, but she didn't look away. "Me too." Something shifted between them in that moment, subtle but undeniable. The air felt charged, heavy with possibilities neither of them was quite ready to name. Clara broke eye contact first, focusing intently on her food. "I should probably finish those reports." "Right. Yes." Yates cleared his throat, annoyed at himself for the sudden awkwardness. "I have contracts to review." She gathered her takeout container and stood, pausing at the door. "Yates?" "Yeah, I'm not." She stopped herself, a small smile playing at her lips. Good night. Good night, Clara. The following week, the company threw its annual charity gala, a black tie affair that Yates had to attend as CEO but generally found tedious. He spent most of these events networking, smiling for photos, and making small talk with donors and board members who all wanted something from him. He was 3 conversations deep with a potential investor when Clara walked in. Yates forgot what he was saying mid-sentence. She wore a deep blue dress that somehow managed to be both elegant and understated, her hair styled in soft waves around her shoulders. She looked nervous, clutching a small purse and scanning the room as if looking for a familiar face. "Excuse me," Yates said to the investor, not caring that he was being rude. His feet carried him across the ballroom floor before his brain caught up with his actions. Clara's face lit up when she saw him approaching. "Hey, I wasn't sure if I know you're busy with all the important people and I probably don't apologize," he said automatically, then registered what he'd said. "Wait, you didn't actually apologize that time." "I was about to," she admitted. "You're getting good at predicting it, because it happens constantly." But he was smiling as he said it, and she was smiling back, and suddenly the gala didn't seem nearly as tedious. "You look beautiful." The words slipped out unfiltered, more honest than smooth. Clara's eyes widened, and for a moment, he worried he'd crossed a line. They were technically employer and employee, even if they'd become something close to friends over the past months. "Thank you," she said softly. "You clean up pretty nice yourself." He offered his arm without thinking about it. "Can I get you a drink? I'd like that." They spent the next 2 hours together, and Yates realized he was enjoying a work event for the first time in years. Clara made dry observations about the over-elaborate ice sculptures, and got him laughing with her impression of the board chairman's self-important speech patterns. When a slow song started, he asked her to dance without examining too closely why his heart was pounding. "Fair warning," Clara said as he led her onto the dance floor. "I'm not great at this. Just follow my lead." His hand settled on her waist, and he tried to ignore how right it felt, how perfectly she fit against him. They swayed to the music, and Clara relaxed incrementally in his arms. "Can I ask you something, always? Why do you care about the apologizing thing?" Yates considered the question. "Because I see how good you are at what you do, how smart and capable and innovative you are. And then I watch you apologize for being in meetings you're supposed to be in, for sending emails that need to be sent, for having ideas that end up saving us money. It's like watching someone with wings apologize for taking up sky." Clara had gone very still. When she looked up at him, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." "Then people around you haven't been paying attention." The song ended, but neither of them moved apart immediately. Other couples swirled around them as the next song began, but Yates was only aware of Clara, of the way she was looking at him like he'd rearranged her understanding of something fundamental. "Yates," she whispered, "Clara, I'm not sorry I met you." He smiled, his thumb tracing an absent pattern on her waist. "Good, you shouldn't be." Someone called his name from across the room, a board member wanting an introduction, and the spell broke. Clara stepped back, smoothing her dress. "You should go," she said. "Important CEO things." "Later," he promised. "Save me another dance." "Okay," she smiled, and it was like sunlight breaking through clouds. The rest of the night felt endless. Yates networked and schmoozed and played his role, but his attention kept drifting back to Clara. She was talking with some of the other operations staff, laughing at something one of them said, looking more relaxed than he usually saw her at work events. When he finally made his excuses and went looking for her, she was standing on the venue's terrace, looking out at the city lights. The spring air was cool and she rubbed her arms against the chill. Yates shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders without a word. "Thank you," Clara said, pulling the jacket closer. It swamped her smaller frame. "I needed some air. It gets overwhelming in there." "Tell me about it." He leaned against the railing beside her. "I hate these things usually. But not tonight, he confirmed, looking at her rather than the view. "Clara, his phone buzzed urgently in his pocket. He considered ignoring it, but the ring pattern indicated it was the emergency line. With an apologetic glance at Clara, he answered. "Mr. Norwood, we have a situation at the Michigan plant," his director of operations said. "Fire in one of the warehouses. No injuries, but significant damage. We need you on a call with the insurance company and the plant manager." Yates closed his eyes briefly. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. When he hung up, Clara was already moving toward the door. "Go, I understand." "Clara, wait, it's fine," she said, slipping his jacket off and handing it back. "Really? This is your job, I get it." But there was something in her voice, a resignation that bothered him more than it should. Like she'd expected this, expected to come second to work and obligations and everything else that always seemed to take priority. "Tomorrow," he said firmly. "We'll talk tomorrow," she nodded but didn't quite meet his eyes. "Sure, tomorrow." He wanted to say more, to finish what he'd started, but his phone was buzzing again. Clara gave him a small wave and disappeared back into the ballroom, and Yates was left standing on the terrace alone, wondering when exactly his feelings for his operations manager had shifted from respect to something far more complicated. The next morning, Clara called in sick. And the morning after that. By the third day, Yates was certain she was avoiding him, though her email responses were prompt and professional. When he asked her assistant if everything was okay, the younger woman had shrugged and said Clara mentioned a stomach bug. On the fourth day, Yates had had enough. He left work early, something he never did, and drove to Clara's apartment, stopping only to pick up soup from the deli she'd once mentioned loving. She answered the door in sweatpants and an oversized university sweatshirt, her hair in a messy bun. She clearly wasn't sick, and from the surprise on her face, she hadn't expected him to call her bluff. "You're not sick," he said. "I never actually said I was sick," Clara countered. "I said I wasn't feeling well, which was true." "Can I come in?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. Her apartment was small but cozy, full of plants and books and throw pillows in cheerful colors. It suited her. "I brought soup," Yates offered, holding up the bag, "just in case you actually were sick." That was thoughtful. Clara took the bag and headed toward her small kitchen. "Do you want some?" "There's enough for two." They heated the soup in silence, the quiet stretching between them with the weight of things unsaid. Finally, sitting at her tiny dining table with bowls of chicken noodle soup, Yates broke. "Did I do something wrong?" Clara's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "What? No, why would you think that? Because you've been avoiding me since the gala." "I haven't been," she stopped, set down her spoon. "Okay, maybe I have been, a little." "Why?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her soup like it held answers. "Because I was scared." "Of what?" "Of this." She gestured between them. "Whatever this is has been becoming." "Because you're my boss and you're way out of my league, and I have this terrible habit of apologizing for existing, and you're this confident, successful, amazing person who has his whole life together, and I, Clara." He reached across the table and took her hand. "Breathe." She did, her fingers trembling slightly in his. "I'm falling for you," she whispered. "And that terrifies me because I don't know how to do this without messing it up, without being too much or not enough. And at the gala, when you had to leave, it just reminded me that you have this huge life with all these responsibilities, and I'm just what?" His thumb stroked over her knuckles. Just the woman who's been keeping me sane for the past 6 months. Just the person I look forward to seeing every day. Just the one who makes me laugh and challenges me and makes me want to be better than I am. Clara's eyes were wide, vulnerable in a way he'd never seen. Yates, I'm falling for you too, he said. I have been for a while. And yes, it's complicated because of work, and yes, my life is demanding. But Clara, you don't make it more complicated, you make it better. You make me want to actually have a life instead of just a career. I'm a mess, she said, but there was hope creeping into her voice. You're wonderful. He said it with absolute conviction. And I'm tired of pretending I don't want this, don't want you. She was quiet, and he could practically see her mind working, weighing risks and possibilities. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. I'm not sorry, she said. For what? For any of it. For developing feelings for my boss. For wanting this even though it's complicated. For being here with you right now. Her smile widened. How's that for progress? Yates stood, moving around the table until he was standing beside her chair. Clara looked up at him, and he cupped her face gently in his hands. That's perfect progress. When he kissed her, it felt like something clicking into place, like the solution to a problem he'd been working on for months. She tasted like chicken soup and possibility, and when she stood to wrap her arms around his neck, he pulled her closer, feeling her smile against his lips. So what do we do now? Clara asked when they finally broke apart, breathless. Now, Yates said, we figure it out, together. They agreed to keep things quiet at work initially, not because they were ashamed, but because Clara wanted to establish herself further before dealing with the inevitable office gossip. Yates hated the secrecy, but he understood her reasoning. She'd worked hard to be taken seriously, and he wouldn't undermine that. Still, keeping his hands to himself during work hours turned out to be harder than he'd anticipated. Stop looking at me like that, Clara muttered during a budget meeting, not looking up from her spreadsheet. Like what? Yates asked innocently. Like you're thinking about something other than quarterly projections. I'm a multitasker. She bit back a smile, and he counted it as a victory. Their evenings became something he looked forward to with an intensity that would have alarmed him a few months ago. Some nights, they went out quiet restaurants where they wouldn't run into colleagues, hiking trails outside the city, a concert where they could get lost in the crowd. Other nights they stayed in, cooking dinner together in Clara's apartment or his house, talking until late about everything and nothing. He learned the small things, the intimate details that came with truly knowing someone. That she sang off-key in the shower. That she arranged her books by color rather than author because she liked how it looked. That she had a scar on her knee from falling out of a tree when she was 9. That she cried at commercials but not at movies. She learned his tells. The way he rubbed the back of his neck when he was stressed. That he couldn't fall asleep without reading at least a few pages. That he had a terrible sweet tooth he tried to hide. That he called his sister every Sunday morning without fail. You're a lot softer than people think, Clara said one evening. They were at his house, sprawled on the couch with the remains of Thai takeout on the coffee table. Don't tell anyone, Yates said, pressing a kiss to her temple. I have a reputation to maintain. Your secret's safe with me. She tilted her head up to look at him. Though I think more people would respect you if they saw this side. Maybe, but I like that you get to see it. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I like having something that's just ours, and it was just theirs, this careful bubble they'd created away from work and obligations. In those stolen moments, Yates felt like himself in a way he hadn't in years. Not the CEO, not the dutiful son, just Yates, with a woman who made him laugh and challenged him and looked at him like he hung the moon. 3 months into their relationship, Clara caught herself mid-apology during a presentation to the executive team and stopped, her eyes automatically finding Yates across the conference table. "Actually, no," she said, straightening her shoulders. "I'm not sorry. This data shows clearly that we need to restructure our supplier relationships, and while I understand it's a big change, I'm confident in this analysis." Pride swelled in Yates's chest. Around the table, executives nodded, taking her seriously in a way that would have been harder if she'd been apologizing for her own expertise. After the meeting, he caught her in the hallway. "Well done in there." Clara was practically glowing. "Did you see that?" "I almost apologized and then I just didn't. I stated my case and stood by it. I saw." He wanted to kiss her, to sweep her into his arms and tell her how incredible she was, but they were at work. So instead he settled for, "I'm proud of you." The smile she gave him was worth the restraint. That weekend, Yates took Clara to meet his sister. He hadn't planned it exactly, but Rebecca had called announcing she was in town for a conference, and before he could overthink it, he'd asked Clara if she wanted to come to dinner. Meeting the family. Clara had asked, trying to keep her tone light. "That's kind of a big step." "Only if you want to," Yates said quickly. "No pressure, but yes, I'd like you to meet her, if you're comfortable with that." Clara had agreed, though her nerves were obvious as they walked into the restaurant. Rebecca was already there, a tall woman with the same dark hair as Yates and a warm, assessing gaze. "You must be Clara," Rebecca said, pulling her into a hug before Clara could offer a handshake. "I've heard so much about you." "You have?" Clara shot Yates a look. "My brother can't shut up about you," Rebecca said cheerfully, ignoring Yates's warning look. "Clara's brilliant, Clara's innovative, Clara makes me laugh. It's been Clara this and Clara that for months." "Becca," Yates said warningly. "What? I'm just being honest." She turned back to Clara with a grin. "It's nice to finally meet the woman who got my workaholic brother to take a vacation day." Dinner was easy, comfortable in a way Yates hadn't anticipated. Rebecca and Clara hit it off immediately, bonding over their shared love of true crime podcasts and their frustration with Yates's tendency to check work emails at all hours. "He's hopeless," Rebecca said, shaking her head. "I've been trying to get him to relax for years." "I'm working on it," Clara said, shooting Yates a fond look. "He's improving, slowly." "Hey," Yates protested. "I'm sitting right here." "We know," they said in unison, then dissolved into laughter. Later, as they were leaving, Rebecca pulled him aside while Clara was in the restroom. "I like her," she said simply. "She's good for you, don't screw this up." "I'm trying not to," Yates said. "Try harder." Rebecca squeezed his arm. "You look happier than I've seen you in years. That's worth protecting." In the car on the way home, Clara was quiet, staring out the window at the passing streetlights. "You okay?" Yates asked. "Yeah." She turned to look at him. "Your sister is great. She liked you too, I could tell." "How?" "Because if she didn't, she would have told you all my embarrassing childhood stories to scare you off." He reached over and took her hand. "What are you thinking about? Just how real this is getting, how serious." She laced her fingers through his. "Meeting families, spending weekends together, planning around each other. This isn't casual anymore." "No," he agreed. "It's not. Is that okay?" Clara was quiet for a moment, then squeezed his hand. "Yeah, it's more than okay. It's kind of amazing, actually." The next few months passed in a blur of happiness that Yates had never quite expected to find. Work remained demanding, but it felt different now, knowing he had someone to come home to. Someone who understood the pressure, but also reminded him there was more to life than quarterly reports and board meetings. They still kept things quiet at the office, though Yates suspected people were starting to figure it out. He caught knowing looks from his assistant when Clara called, and there had been a few comments about how much time they spent in meetings together. "We should probably tell HR," Clara said one evening. They were at her apartment, and she was curled against his side on the couch. "Make it official, do the disclosure forms. I don't want there to be any question about ethics or favoritism." "You're right." Yates pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Monday, she agreed. The disclosure process was straightforward, if slightly awkward. The HR director assured them that as long as Clara didn't report directly to Yates, which she didn't, there was no policy violation. They just needed to keep things professional at work and ensure that their relationship didn't impact business decisions. "Congratulations," the HR director said as they were leaving. "Office romances can be tricky, but you two seem to have your heads on straight about it." Word spread quickly after that, as office gossip always did. There were a few raised eyebrows, some knowing smiles, and one uncomfortable conversation with a male executive who seemed to think Clara's promotions had been influenced by their relationship. "Clara earned every advancement through her work," Yates had said coldly. "I have the performance reviews to prove it, and if you're suggesting otherwise, we can discuss it with the board." The executive had backed down quickly. Clara handled the attention with more grace than Yates expected, though he could tell it bothered her when people made assumptions about her competence. "Let them talk," she said when he apologized for the situation. "I know what I've accomplished. You know what I've accomplished. The people whose opinions matter know. The rest is just noise." "When did you get so wise?" he asked. She gave him a wry smile. "Around the time I stopped apologizing for existing." That summer, Yates convinced Clara to take a real vacation with him. 2 weeks hiking through national parks with no laptops and minimal cell service. She'd been hesitant at first, worried about being away from work for so long, but he'd been insistent. "The company survived before you," he'd said. "It'll survive while you're gone, and frankly, you've earned it." The trip was transformative. Without the structure of work and routines, they discovered new dimensions of each other. Yates learned that Clara was fiercely competitive at campsite board games and sang loudly to the radio during long drives. Clara learned that he was terrible at setting up tents and had an encyclopedic knowledge of bird species. One night, camping under more stars than Yates had seen in years, Clara rolled onto her side to look at him. "I love you," she said quietly. They were words they'd skirted around but never quite said directly. Yates's heart kicked hard against his ribs. "I love you too," he said, reaching for her hand. "I have for a while." How long, he thought about it. "Remember that night with the fried rice, when you asked if I liked my life? That was months ago, I know." He brought her hand to his lips. "I didn't realize it then, but looking back, that's when I knew. When I realized you were the best part of my day every day." Clara's eyes were bright in the starlight. "That's incredibly romantic. Don't sound so surprised. I have my moments." She laughed and kissed him, and they stayed up until dawn, talking about futures and possibilities and dreams they were only starting to believe they could reach for together. Back at work, things continued to evolve. Clara was promoted to Senior Vice President of Operations, a move that Yates had carefully recused himself from to avoid any appearance of impropriety. The board had made the decision unanimously based on her performance and the measurable impact she'd had on the company's efficiency. "How does it feel?" Yates asked that evening after she'd accepted the promotion. "Terrifying, exciting, like I might throw up." She paused. "I didn't apologize once during the meeting, though, not even when I was thanking them. I noticed." He pulled her into his arms. "I'm so proud of you." "Thank you for believing in me," she said softly. "Even when I didn't believe in myself. You did the work, Clara, all of it. I just stopped letting you apologize for it." She pulled back to look at him, her expression serious. You did more than that. You saw me. Really saw me, not just what I could do for the company or how I could be useful. You made me believe I deserved to take up space. You do, he said fiercely. Never forget that. That fall, Yates's father passed away after a long illness. It wasn't unexpected, but grief never really is, not when it arrives. He found himself struggling with complicated emotions, relief mixed with sadness, guilt about feeling relief, and a strange unmoored feeling now that the man whose approval he'd spent his life seeking was gone. Clara was his anchor through it all. She organized the funeral details he couldn't face, fielded phone calls when he couldn't talk to anyone, and simply held him on the nights when the weight of it all was too much. You don't have to be strong right now, she told him one night when he was trying to hold it together. Not with me. So he'd let himself break, just a little in the safety of her arms. At the funeral, Rebecca pulled Clara aside. Thank you for taking care of him, she said. I'm glad he has you. I'm glad I have him too, Clara replied honestly. In the months following his father's death, Yates found himself reevaluating everything. What he wanted from life, from his career, from the future. His father had lived for the company, had sacrificed relationships and health and happiness for its success. Yates didn't want that to be his story. I'm thinking about restructuring my role, he told Clara one evening. They were at his house, cooking dinner together, moving around his kitchen with the ease of long practice. Bring in a COO to handle more of the day-to-day operations. Keep my position as CEO but delegate more. What would you do with the extra time? Clara asked, stirring the pasta sauce. Live, he said simply. Travel more. Actually use vacation days. Spend time with the people I care about. He moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Maybe start planning for a life outside the office. Clara leaned back against him. That sounds nice. Yeah. He pressed a kiss to her neck. Because I was thinking that life might include some big changes, eventually. He felt her smile. Like what? Like maybe not living in separate apartments, like maybe making this more permanent. Clara turned in his arms, her eyes searching his face. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Not yet, he admitted. But soon. If you want that too, I do, she said softly. I really do. They moved in together that winter, choosing a house that was neither his nor hers but theirs, with enough space for a home office for each of them, and a yard that Clara immediately started planning to fill with a garden. The domesticity of it surprised him. Yates had lived alone for so long that he'd forgotten what it was like to share space with someone. But with Clara, it felt natural, coming home to find her already there, singing off-key while she cooked dinner. Weekend mornings moving slowly, reading the news and drinking coffee in comfortable silence. The casual intimacy of building a life together. I never thought I'd have this, Clara admitted one Saturday morning. They were in their pajamas, Clara's feet in his lap while she read a novel and he reviewed some contracts that couldn't wait until Monday. A relationship that feels easy, natural. It's not always easy, Yates pointed out. They'd had their share of arguments, mostly about work-life balance and his tendency to overcommit. No, she agreed, but it's never hard in the way I thought relationships had to be. There's no making myself smaller or apologizing for having needs or walking on eggshells. It's just us. Just us, he repeated, liking the sound of it. That's enough. That's everything. Spring came, and with it, the company's biggest acquisition in its history. A merger that would double their size and establish them as a dominant player in the manufacturing sector. It was the culmination of 2 years of negotiations, the kind of deal that defined legacies. The night the deal closed, there was a celebration at the office. Champagne flowed, executives congratulated each other, and Yates gave a speech about the company's future that was met with applause. But all he could think about was getting home to Clara. She'd been instrumental in the merger, her analysis and operational planning making the deal viable. But she'd left the celebration early, claiming a headache. Yates knew better. She still struggled sometimes with being the center of attention, with accepting praise for her accomplishments. He found her at home, sitting on their back porch with a glass of wine, looking up at the stars. "Hey," he said softly, sliding the door open. "You okay?" "Yeah," she smiled at him. "Just needed some quiet. It was a lot in there." It was. He sat beside her, taking her hand. "We did it." "You did it." He corrected firmly. "None of this happens without you. You know that, right?" Clara was quiet for a moment. "I'm getting better at knowing that. At believing I deserve credit for the work I do. But sometimes it still feels strange, being celebrated like that." "You'll get used to it," Yates said, "because I plan to spend the rest of my life celebrating you." Something in his tone made her turn to look at him. He was already moving, sliding off his chair and onto one knee. "Clara," he said, pulling the ring box from his pocket. "I had this whole speech planned, about how you changed my life, how you made me want to be better, how I can't imagine my future without you in it. But right now, looking at you, all I can think is that I love you, more than I knew it was possible to love someone, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you, every single day." Tears were streaming down Clara's face. "Yates, I know we said we'd wait," he continued. "That we'd give it more time. But Clara, I don't need more time. I know you're it for me. So will you marry me?" "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, of course, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and then she was in his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. When they kissed, it tasted like salt and champagne and promise. "I'm not sorry," Clara said when they finally broke apart. "For what? For any of it. For falling in love with you, for saying yes, for wanting this life with you." She cupped his face in her hands. "I'm not sorry for being happy." "Good," Yates said, his own eyes damp. "You should never apologize for that. They were married that fall in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. Rebecca was Clara's maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony. Clara's parents flew in from Iowa, her father walking her down the aisle with unconcealed pride. When it came time for the vows, Clara spoke without notes, her voice steady and sure. "Yates, you taught me that I don't have to make myself smaller to be loved. That my ambition and my passion and my presence are gifts, not burdens. You saw me when I was still learning to see myself. You believed in me before I believed in myself. I promise to spend our life together reminding you of the same things. That you're more than your accomplishments, that you deserve rest and joy and space to just be. I love you, and I'm not sorry for that. I'll never be sorry for that." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Yates's vows were simpler but no less heartfelt. "Clara, you walked into my life and changed everything. You made me want more than just success. You made me want a life worth living. I promise to always tell you when you're apologizing unnecessarily, to always remind you of your worth. To always choose you, choose us, choose this life we're building together. I love you more than words can say, and I can't wait to spend forever showing you." When the officiant pronounced them married, Yates kissed her like they were the only two people in the world, and for that moment they were. Their honeymoon was 3 weeks in New Zealand, hiking and exploring and deliberately not checking work emails. They talked about the future, about the life they wanted to build. Clara wanted to keep working, at least for a while, though she admitted she was interested in eventually consulting rather than full-time corporate work. Yates was already transitioning more responsibilities to his COO, focusing more on strategy and vision than day-to-day operations. "I want kids," Clara said one evening. They were in a hot tub at their hotel watching the sun set over the mountains. Eventually, if you do, I do, Yates confirmed. 2, maybe 3. I want to still work, though, at least part-time. I'm not ready to give that up. I wouldn't want you to, he said honestly. You've worked too hard to build your career to just walk away. We'll figure it out together. Together, Clara repeated, smiling. I like the sound of that. They returned home to congratulations and good wishes, settling back into their routines with the easy comfort of two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Work remained fulfilling, but no longer all-consuming. They had dinner together most nights, took weekends for themselves, and slowly built the balanced life they'd both craved. A year into their marriage, Clara came home with news. She'd been offered a position on the board of a major nonprofit focused on manufacturing education and workforce development. It would be part-time, meaningful work that aligned with her values. I want to take it, she said, but it would mean stepping back from my role at Norwood. Maybe moving to consulting or advisory rather than full-time executive. Then take it, Yates said without hesitation. This is what you want. I think so. I love what I do, but I'm ready for something different, something that feels more purposeful. She paused. And there's something else. The way she said it made his heart skip. What? Clara took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. I'm pregnant. Joy flooded through him, pure and uncomplicated. Really, really. I took 3 tests this morning just to be sure. She was smiling but looked nervous. I know we said we'd wait another year, but, Clara, he interrupted gently, don't apologize. She laughed, wiping at her eyes. I wasn't going to. Good. Because this is amazing. You're amazing. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. We're having a baby. We're having a baby, she repeated, and it sounded like a promise, like the future clicking into place. The pregnancy was smooth, and Clara glowed her way through 9 months while transitioning to her new role. She took to board work naturally, her operational expertise and strategic thinking making her an invaluable asset to the nonprofit. She loved the work, the sense of making a real difference in people's lives beyond profit margins and quarterly reports. Their daughter was born on a Tuesday morning in March, a squalling bundle with dark hair and her mother's green eyes. They named her Emma Jane Norwood, and Yates fell in love all over again the moment he held her. Hi, sweetheart, Clara whispered, exhausted and radiant in the hospital bed. We're your parents. We're going to try really hard not to mess this up. Yates laughed, cradling Emma carefully. We're going to be great at this. How do you know? Because we learned how to be great together, he said. Everything else is just practice. Parenthood was harder than either of them expected, but also more rewarding. Emma was a colicky baby who didn't sleep through the night until she was 8 months old. There were days when both Yates and Clara were running on fumes, navigating work and childcare and the 1,000 small crises that came with an infant. But there were also moments of transcendent joy. Emma's first smile, directed at Clara while she sang off-key. Her first laugh when Yates made silly faces. The way she reached for both of them, knowing she was safe, loved, wanted. I can't believe we made her, Clara said one evening. Emma was finally asleep, and they were collapsed on the couch, too tired to even think about cooking dinner. We did good work, Yates agreed. His arm was around Clara, her head on his shoulder. The best work. She tilted her head up to look at him. You know what I was thinking about today? What? That day you first told me not to apologize. In that conference room with the executives staring at us. I remember. I thought you were annoyed with me, that I was bothering you with my constant apologies. And now I know you were seeing me, really seeing me maybe before I saw myself. She reached up and touched his face. You gave me that, the confidence to be who I am without apology. You gave yourself that, Yates corrected. I just pointed out what was already there. We saved each other, Clara said, in different ways. Yeah, he agreed. We did. Emma grew into a toddler, then a preschooler, all wild curls and endless questions. Clara went back to work part-time when Emma was 2, balancing consulting projects and board work with parenting. Yates cut back even further at Norwood, spending 3 days a week in the office and the rest working from home. They had a second child, a son they named Daniel, when Emma was 4. He was an easier baby, content and cheerful, balancing Emma's intensity with his calm nature. Our family is complete, Clara said, holding Daniel while Emma helped by bringing blankets and stuffed animals. This is it. This is what I always wanted but didn't know I could have. Me too, Yates said, pulling Emma onto his lap. She immediately started telling him an elaborate story about her stuffed animals, and he listened with the same attention he once gave board meetings. Years passed in the beautiful chaos of family life. Dance recitals and soccer games, homework help and bedtime stories, family vacations and lazy Sunday mornings. Clara continued her work, her reputation in the nonprofit sector growing as she helped launch programs that trained thousands of workers in new skills. Yates stepped back even further from Norwood eventually, transitioning to chairman and letting younger leadership drive the company forward. They moved once, to a bigger house with space for everyone and a yard where the kids could play. Clara finally got her garden, spending weekend mornings teaching Emma and Daniel about plants and growing things. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they went back to the restaurant where they'd had their first date, leaving the kids with Rebecca for the evening. 10 years, Clara marveled, looking at the ring on her finger that had been joined by a wedding band. It feels like forever and no time at all. I know what you mean. Yates reached across the table for her hand. Best 10 years of my life, though. Mine, too, she smiled. Remember when I used to apologize for everything? Vaguely, he teased. Something about you being incredibly talented but refusing to acknowledge it. I've gotten better about that. You have. Though you still apologize when you bump into furniture. That's just being polite, Clara protested, laughing. To the furniture. It has feelings, he laughed, and they fell into the easy conversation that had always come naturally to them. Talking about the kids, about work, about plans for the future. Clara was considering writing a book about workforce development. Yates was toying with the idea of teaching at the local university, sharing decades of business experience with students. We really built a good life, didn't we? Clara said as they were leaving the restaurant, walking hand in hand to the car. We really did. Yates stopped, pulling her into his arms right there on the sidewalk. I love you, Clara Norwood. I've loved you for over a decade, and I'll love you for the rest of my life. I love you too, she said, kissing him softly. And I'm not sorry about any of it. Good, he murmured against her lips. Never be sorry for this. And she wasn't. Not for the love she'd found, the family they'd built, the life they'd created together. Not for taking up space, for being seen, for believing she deserved good things. Clara had learned long ago to stop apologizing for existing. But more than that, she'd learned to celebrate it, to embrace every beautiful, messy, wonderful moment of the life she and Yates had built together. 20 years after that first conference room meeting, Yates and Clara sat on their porch swing, watching Emma and Daniel play in the yard with their own families. Emma had 2 kids now, and Daniel had just welcomed his first. The grandchildren ran and shrieked, filling the evening air with noise and chaos. Grandma, Emma's daughter called. Come push me on the swing, Clara stood, stretching. Duty calls. Yates caught her hand as she passed, pulling her down for a quick kiss. Love you too. She smiled, that same smile that had captured him all those years ago. "See you in a minute." He watched her go, this woman who'd changed his entire world simply by being herself, who'd learned to take up space and never apologized for it again, who'd built a career and a family and a life of purpose and meaning. Emma came to sit beside him, her youngest on her hip. "You two are still disgustingly cute together, you know that?" "Thank you," Yates said, not bothering to hide his smile. "I hope I have what you and Mom have," Emma said quietly. "That kind of partnership, that kind of love." "You will," Yates assured her. "It's out there. You just have to be brave enough to reach for it when it shows up." "Was Mom scared when you got together?" "Terrified," he admitted. "She didn't think she deserved it. Kept apologizing for taking up space in my life." "That's so weird to think about," Emma said. "Mom's always been so confident, so sure of herself." "She learned," Yates said. "We both did. She taught me how to live, and I taught her how to stop apologizing. We built something good together." Clara returned then, breathless and laughing, grass stains on her jeans from playing with the grandkids. "Those children have endless energy," she announced, collapsing onto the swing beside Yates. "I'm too old for this." "You're perfect," he said, kissing her temple. Flatterer. But she was smiling, leaning into him with the ease of decades together. Emma excused herself to check on the kids, leaving them alone. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. From the yard came the sound of children playing, of family and life and love. "Happy?" Yates asked softly. Clara turned to look at him, her green eyes still as bright as they'd been that first day in the conference room. "Incredibly," she said. "Are you more than I ever thought possible?" She kissed him then, sweet and unhurried, and Yates thought about all the years behind them and all the years still to come. Thought about a younger version of himself who'd been so focused on work that he almost missed the woman who would become his entire world. Thought about Clara learning to stop apologizing and start believing in herself. "Thank you," Clara whispered against his lips. "For what?" "For seeing me, for loving me, for building this life with me." "Thank you for letting me," he replied. "Best decision I ever made." "Don't apologize for that," she teased. "Never," he promised. "Not for a single second of it." And as the sun set on another beautiful day, surrounded by the family they'd created and the love they'd built, neither of them had a single thing to apologize for. They'd found each other, believed in each other, and created a life beyond anything either had dreamed possible. It was, quite simply, everything.